It's 5 p.m. across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. With me today from London is my colleague, Julia Chapman. Good afternoon to you, Julia.
Good afternoon, Tanvi. It's 11:30 a.m. in London and 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we look at the latest in Gaza, what's pushing up oil prices, and efforts to slow down migrant crossings to the U.S. But first, the headlines.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar holds bilateral talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow, highlight the special and privileged strategic partnership.
Our relationship have been very strong, very steady, and I think we have lived up to the responsibilities of a special and privileged strategic partnership.
Israel says fighting against Hamas to last for months as fears of conflict spreading to the Middle East rise. US President Biden speaks to Qatar over hostage release and possibility of a truce. Houthis claim responsibility for drone attack and warn Red Sea attacks will not stop until Israel ends its offensive in Gaza. Israel terms these attacks an act of Iranian terrorism. And world markets in green, expecting a US Fed rate cut. Indian markets hit an all-time high. Nifty crosses 21,650 points in day's trade. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow on Wednesday. Jaishankar said that India-Russia relationship has been very strong and very steady, and he believes that both the countries have lived up to a special and privileged strategic partnership. Dr. Jaishankar is on a 5-day visit to Russia.
India-Russia relations remain very steady, remain very strong. They are based on our strategic convergence. We appreciated the fact that our trade is at an all-time high. We have crossed $50 billion turnover last year. We expect to exceed that this year. And what is important is that this trade is more balanced, it is sustainable, and it provides for fair market access.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that specific agreements have been reached to deepen the economic and investment cooperation.
Out in favor of continued political dialogue, which is required to strengthen our relations on a sustainable basis. We have paid special attention to the matters of building up practical cooperation, in addition to the agreements that had been reached yesterday as part of the session of the Intergovernmental Commission. Today we have agreed upon a number of steps that would allow us to expand cooperation, including in the context of the upcoming launch of the North-South International Transport Corridor, as well as the establishment of the Chennai-Vladivostok route, and the cooperation on the exploration of the Northern Sea route, which is a very promising area.
Now, DD India's Dasha Chernyshova joins us from Moscow. Dasha, what more can you tell us about what was discussed between Sergei Lavrov and S. Jaishankar?
Well, we understand the whole scope of bilateral and international agenda has been discussed during that meeting, with the Russian foreign minister saying that Russia cherishes and values its relations with India, and India saying that Russia is a reliable and valuable partner for India. Now, we understand that one of the issues on the table is trade turnover that has increased over the course of the past years, reaching $50 billion last year and expected to exceed that benchmark mark this year. It is a growth from around $13 billion just 2 years ago. Now we understand the sides are aiming to have more settlements in national currencies. This is in line with the so-called de-dollarization in the international economic relations. We also understand that the sides have been talking about tighter partnership and tighter cooperation when it comes to the international platforms, be it the United Nations, the Shanghai Security Cooperation Organization, or any other format where the two countries are represented. The military technical cooperation has also been discussed, with the sides talking about the joint production of the military equipment. They are discussing this prospect as well. And obviously the energy sector, where Russia is exporting more of its energy resources to India. And now we also understand that they are talking about widening the scope of the areas where the two sides could be cooperating.
Dasha, how much of the Ukraine crisis and the Israel-Hamas conflict figured in the talks?
Well, as we have heard, the Russian foreign minister, Moscow has presented its position over what it calls its special military operation in Ukraine, its view over what is happening in Kiev, and obviously the Russian position that Moscow will, no matter what, but still aim to achieve the goals of the special military operation in Ukraine. We also understand from the statements earlier released by the Russian foreign ministry that the sides were definitely going to talk about the situation in Gaza, how to end the hostilities that are killing the lives of the civilians. But obviously the sides are talking about all conflicts in the world in which Moscow says Washington is to be blamed for.
Okay, thank you so much, Dasha, for those updates. Russian Foreign Ministry has warned Japan over providing Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. Spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said if Japan decides to hand over Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine, it will have grave consequences for Russia-Japan ties. Japan has also joined its Western allies in imposing sweeping economic sanctions on Russia.
It is not excluded that the transfer of Patriot ammunition will involve the use of an already well-established scheme in which the munitions end up in Ukraine. Regarding that, we should like to warn that if Japanese missiles fall into the hands of Ukrainian armed forces, such actions will be regarded as hostile to the Russian Federation and will have grave consequences for Japan in the context of bilateral ties.
On to West Asia now, highlighting that there are no magic solutions, no shortcuts in dismantling a terrorist organization. Israel's military chief today cautioned about the risk of the conflict spreading. My colleague Julia Chapman is in London. She gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Julia, 82 days into the conflict, the return of hostages still being a major concern.
That's right, Tanvi. US President Joe Biden spoke to the Emir of Qatar on Tuesday in an effort to secure the release of all hostages held by Hamas. Qatar and Egypt were mediators between Israel and Hamas in the late November truce. In a statement, the White House said the leaders discussed the urgent effort required to secure the release of the remaining hostages and talked about ways to increase access to aid. Meanwhile, Israel's military chief Herzi Halevi says the Israel-Hamas conflict in Gaza will likely go on for many months. Israel has vowed to defeat Hamas after its fighters infiltrated Israeli border towns on October 7th, killing 1,200 people and taking around 240 hostage.
There are no magic solutions. There are no shortcuts in dismantling a terrorist organization. Only determined and persistent fighting will work, and we are very, very determined. We will reach Hamas's leadership too, whether it takes a week or if it takes months.
The Israeli army released videos on Wednesday showing ground, air and naval strikes on Hamas targets in Gaza. The conflict intensified in the central area of the besieged enclave, just south of the waterway that divides the Gaza Strip. The Israeli army warned civilians to leave the area. Meanwhile, Hezbollah has been trading fire with Israel at the Lebanon border. The Israeli Defense Forces said it successfully intercepted a number of launches from Lebanon on Wednesday. The day before, Hezbollah fired anti-tank missiles at an Israeli church, injuring 9 soldiers and a civilian. The United Nations has assigned Sigrid Kaag as its new humanitarian coordinator for Gaza. Her appointment follows last week's UN Security Council resolution calling for more aid to enter the Palestinian enclave. DD India's William Denslow reports from New York.
As well as serving as Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister in the Netherlands, Sigrid Kaag has also performed a number of UN duties in the past, including Special Coordinator for Lebanon. Now, as of January 8th, she'll be taking on a new UN role, which is Humanitarian Relief Coordinator in Gaza. The United Nations describes her responsibilities, including her work to facilitate, coordinate, monitor and verify humanitarian relief consignments for Gaza. This is part of a UN Security Council resolution that was passed last week that calls for the urgent steps to be taken to immediately allow the safe, unhindered and expanded humanitarian access in Gaza. The resolution took days of diplomatic wranglings for council members to find enough consensus to pass it. But critics say it's been watered down and diluted too much, no longer calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. UN aid agencies warn that the healthcare system in Gaza is on the brink of collapse, and other aid officials on the ground warn that a quarter of the population in the Palestinian enclave are facing catastrophic levels of hunger. Recently, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says that a ceasefire is the only way to end the nightmare people in Gaza are currently going through. William Denslow in New York, reporting for DD India.
As Houthi fighters target tankers in the Red Sea and the Panama Canal is beset by drought, global trade is taking a hit. The current fighting has led to a sharp rise in oil prices, which jumped 2% on Tuesday. DD India's Mihir Makuri has this report.
Amidst the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict, Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels have again stepped up their Red Sea attacks, threatening to target all ships heading to Israel and warning shipping companies against dealing with Israeli ports in solidarity with Gazans. Houthis claimed responsibility for Tuesday's missile attack on a container ship in the Red Sea.
The Yemeni armed forces confirmed the continuation of their operations in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea against Israeli ships or those heading to the ports of occupied Palestine until the food and medicine needed by the Gaza Strip are brought in.
However, the Mediterranean shipping company said there were no injuries to its crew from the attack on its ship, the United 8, en route from Saudi Arabia to Pakistan. Israel has referred to the Houthi attacks on ships at sea as an act of Iranian terrorism.
The attacks at sea on ships which have no Israeli link is an act of Iranian terrorism carried out by the Houthis, and this is a global problem.
On Tuesday, the United States claimed to have shot down 5 missiles fired by the Iranian-backed Houthis and 12 attack drones. Meanwhile, the Israeli military declared that an Israeli fighter plane had intercepted a quote-unquote hostile aerial target that was headed toward Israeli territory over the Red Sea region.
Today, an Israeli fighter jet intercepted a hostile aerial target in the Red Sea area, which was en route to Israeli territory. It did not cross into Israeli territory. The Houthi fire towards Israeli territory is an act of terrorism. It is an act directed by Iran and by means of Iranian intelligence and weapons.
The reported incidents come a week after the United States announced a multinational maritime security initiative in the Red Sea region in response to attacks on vessels by Yemen's Houthis. India has also vowed a strong response against those who masterminded the attacks on MV Chempluto in Arabian Sea and drone attack on vessel MV Sai Baba in Red Sea. The Houthi strikes have resulted in a dramatic increase in container transportation rates as businesses look to ship their goods via alternate, often longer routes. Mihir Makuri, DD, India.
In other news, thousands of people in Serbia continue to protest over the recent election results. The opposition Serbia Against Violence Alliance, which placed second in a general election earlier this month, has accused the ruling Serbian Progressive Party of widespread voter fraud. Serbia Against Violence has been organizing daily protests over the results in front of the country's election commission. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other top American officials will visit Mexico today to discuss migrant crossings with President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Thousands of migrants and asylum seekers continue to move north across the southern Mexican state of Chiapas, hoping to reach the U.S. border. The local authorities estimate that the average number of people trying to cross every day is around 8,000. That's it from me here in London. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Julia. Julia Chapman joining us from our London bureau. You're watching DD India Global. Still to come on the show. Japan lifts operational ban on the world's biggest nuclear plant to reduce its reliance on imported fossil fuels. South Korean actor Lee Sun-kyun, who drew global attention with his performance in the Oscar-winning film Parasite, found dead in an apparent suicide in Seoul.
Well, 2023 is about to end, but it gave us a lot of memories to cherish, especially in the world of cinema. World really went Natu Natu on the peppy beats of the famous movie RRR that got global recognition. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once that completely dominated the 95th Academy Awards. The remarkable career of Michael Douglas and the legend of Bollywood, Waheeda Rehman, was bestowed with the most iconic Dada Saheb Phalke Lifetime Achievement Award. Watch Echoes 2023 World Goes Natu Natu at these times on 28th of December only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. On to Asia again now. Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority on Wednesday decided to lift its de facto ban on operations at the Tokyo Electric Power Company Holdings Kashiwazaki Kariwa nuclear power plant. The nuclear watchdog determined that it now has enough information to lift the ban at the plant in central Japan following additional inspections and meetings with the TEPCO president. South Korea conducted a rare defense drill on Wednesday that simulated an attack by North Korea on Seoul. More than 1,000 South Korean military, police and emergency personnel joined this drill. The exercise comes after North Korea posed a threat after it tested an intercontinental ballistic missile and launched its first military spy satellite, with the neighbors reinstating last month that some military measures were eased after a 2018 pact. Earlier, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un kicked off a key meeting of the country's ruling party on Wednesday, setting the stage for unveiling policy decisions for the new year. According to state media, on the first day of the meeting on Tuesday, participants discussed 6 major agenda items, including this year's policy and budget implementation, a draft budget for 2024, and ways to bolster the party's leadership. Now let's take a look at what else is happening around the world. Veteran German politician Wolfgang Schäuble I beg your pardon, South Korean actor Lee Sun-kyun, who starred in Oscar-winning film Parasite, was found dead on Wednesday. The police said to have found evidence of lit charcoal briquettes inside the 48-year-old actor's car, suggesting his death may have been a suicide. Malaysia's Melaka city is preparing to dazzle visitors with its array of end-of-the-year festivities, including Visit Melaka. The government is focusing on efforts to ensure the cleanliness and beauty of 8 entry points in the state to welcome 18 million tourists and visitors. Veteran German politician Wolfgang Schäuble, who served as a member of the Bundestag parliament for over half a century, died aged 81, one of Germany's longest-serving politicians. Shoaib spent much of his career devoted to reunifying his country. He later served as former Chancellor Angela Merkel's finance minister during the Eurozone debt crisis. On to New Delhi now. An explosion took place last evening near the Israel embassy in New Delhi. In this alleged blast near the Israeli embassy in the Indian national capital on Tuesday, central agencies, including the National Investigation Agency officials, are conducting a probe. DD India's Dibyendu Mondal reports.
Multiple central investigating agencies are currently undertaking investigation outside the Israeli embassy, where a blast allegedly took place at about 5 p.m. on Tuesday evening. Ever since then, a heavy contingent of police personnel have been deployed outside the embassy. Even barricading to enter into the road coming to the embassy has been thoroughly being checked by the Delhi police. Not just this, even the National Investigating Agency, the NIA, and the National Security Guard, along with their dog squad, have been here since last evening collecting crucial evidences that could have been left over here after the blast. At about 5-8 p.m. on Tuesday, according to local eyewitnesses, a loud sound followed by smoke were seen billowing out from the bushes behind me where I'm standing currently. Not just this, the forensics team has also been collecting crucial evidences from the blast site outside the Israeli embassy in New Delhi to understand what led to the blast and what could have caused the blast here outside the embassy. Not just this, in fact, the Delhi police is also saying that an abusive letter has been recovered from the blast site threatening the Israeli embassy staff which are currently stationed in New Delhi. This comes at the backdrop of the Israel-Hamas war that has been ongoing for quite some time now. However, the Delhi police has scanned all the CCTV cameras in this entire area and have told us that at least 2 suspects have been zeroed in and they will be questioned as to what they were doing around the embassy around 5 p.m. when the blast took place. Also, the Ministry of External Affairs have assured safety and security of all the embassy officials here in India and have assured that adequate security will be provided to all the embassy staff here in India. With camera person Ashish, this is Dibyendu Mondal from New Delhi for DD India.
In some business chair now, key Asian stocks went up on Wednesday, buoyed by year-end expectations. In India, shares advanced, tracking gains in Asia and driven by optimism that the US Federal Reserve could begin cutting interest rates early next year. The Sensex jumped over 500 points, while Nifty 50 hit its fresh record high of over 21,650 points. Ending the session, Japan's Nikkei climbed by 1.2%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index advanced by nearly 1%. And India ranks third with 72 unicorn companies with a total valuation of $195.75 billion, according to a report. Welcome to the epicenter of innovation and economic transformation, India, a nation on an extraordinary journey set to leave a lasting imprint on the global stage. Our next report details India's successful startup saga.
India is scripting a narrative of economic resurgence like never before. Join me as we unravel India's startup success story and how it's impacting the whole world in this special report. In the heart of innovation, India emerges as a powerhouse, charting an economic trajectory that rivals the best. Fueling this economic accent is India's dynamic startup ecosystem, a breeding ground for unicorns. Over 112,000 startups have come up since 2014, propelling the nation into a global hub of ideas and cutting-edge technologies. As India transitions from service-oriented to a beacon of product innovation, its GDP is poised to surge 5 to 10% by 2030. A surge fueled by rising household incomes expected to reach new heights, with 50% of households projected to earn over $6,000 by 2030. The startup ecosystem, a catalyst for this transformation, has burgeoned with more than 100,000 startups since 2014, turning the nation into a hotbed of ideas and groundbreaking technologies. Over 23 million households are expected to earn more than $12,000, further contributing to economic growth. Tier 2 cities are becoming tech hubs, fostering the innovation beyond traditional landscapes. Government initiatives like Startup India have nurtured over 114,000 startups, creating over 1.2 million jobs.
The success of Bharat in the global startup ranking reflects a transformation from a mindset of uncertainty to the possibility. Now you can experience a journey from it can't be to it can be. And thank you Bharat Sarkar, thank you Sri Modi ji. And because of that, now we can dare to be a Vyapari from Karmachari.
ये साल 2023 आईटी इंडस्ट्री और स्टार्टअप के नज़रिए से हम एक बेहतर साल कह सकते हैं, क्योंकि कोविड के बाद जो सबसे ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट आया था वो छोटे और जो स्टार्टअप की जो कंपनियां थी ये सबसे ज़्यादा इम्पैक्ट हुई थी. बट थैंक्स टू इंडियन गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसीज़ एंड स्पेशली थैंक्स टू मोदी जी, जिन्होंने समय रहते ही बहुत बेहतरीन पॉलिसीज़ बनाई और उसको अप्लाई भी किया.
1,300 new tech startups coming up in 2019 alone. Women entrepreneurs play a crucial role, constituting 14% of the startup ecosystem, marking a significant increase from the previous years. With a consistent annual growth of 12 to 15%, the startup surge is reshaping economic landscapes. The stage is set for a new era of progress, innovation, and economic prowess, with Indian startups at the forefront of shaping the nation's destiny. Tapush Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
And as we end this edition of DD India Global, we take you to Moscow, where a pony is bringing joy to patients in hospitals. Volunteer Anastasia Kozier and her pony named Dietrich have been visiting hospices around Moscow for over a year, bringing relief to patients who are in palliative care. Kozier and Dietrich have visited patients around Moscow since November 2022. So with those visuals of pony therapy, we wind up this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram at DD India Live. I am Tanvi Taneja from all of us here in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.